What if I told you there's a better way to invest your money than if you're investing in mutual funds, the stock market, or even investing through your 401k? I'm specifically talking about investing in alternative assets. The reason you probably haven't heard of them is because it's not part of what we typically hear from the media. Alternative investments are basically the things that you don't hear about. So we commonly hear about stocks, bonds, and mutual funds. Well, the alternative world is this wide world of everything that's not that. Some examples of that would be things like real estate, business, notes, collectibles, precious metals. There's a ton of different opportunities to invest in the alternative space. But again, most people don't know about it because of that hype machine we know as the media. So let's dive into what alternative assets are, alternative investments are, and how they can be a benefit.
Yeah, the first one, and maybe the biggest one, is tax savings. And I'm careful in my use of that word because when you often hear people talk about their 401k or their IRA, they try to talk about it in terms of tax savings, but you're not necessarily saving on taxes in that situation. You're just pushing it down the road and you're going to pay it later. When you invest in, I'll take an example, real estate, and you receive those tax benefits, that's actually real tax savings. In other words, that's money that you're not paying your taxes now or ever, because it literally removes the need to pay that. And it's unique to alternative assets. You can't get it in the stocks or the bonds, right? It's only if you switch over to this alternative asset category and start investing in these kinds of things that you just talked about, where you can start to create those kinds of long-term, hugely beneficial tax savings.
One of the other incredible benefits that we get from investing in the alternative asset space is that we can very easily utilize leverage. Let's just think about the difference between when I put money into my mutual fund account versus if I were to buy a property, buy a piece of real estate. Typically, when I buy real estate, I'm actually putting a portion of the money down, right? So maybe I put 20 or 25% down, but I'm actually able to purchase something 3 or 4 times greater than that. Now, what that means is that as the asset appreciates, I'm not just getting a return on the money that I put into it, I'm actually getting a return on the full asset value. And by doing that, I can create a return that's more significant and more easily obtained than if the underlying investment has to do all of the heavy lifting. So leverage is a really big reason as to why we love the alternative investment space.
And it amplifies all of the things. So I just talked about the tax benefits. Well, you get more tax benefits when you use leverage. We talk about the kind of return you can expect. Your return goes up when you use leverage. So leverage just works for you. It does a lot of heavy lifting in a lot of different areas.
Talk about control, Rod.
Yeah, so control is a big one. Have you ever thought about the companies that you invest in when you buy a stock or a mutual fund? Do you have any say over what happens with them? Absolutely not, right? On the other hand, if you own your own business or you are an investor in someone else's business, and because you own a chunk of that equity in that business, you actually have a say in what happens. You actually are able to track and have a real conversation that makes a difference in the way that business is run. That gives you control. When you invest in real estate, it's your asset, right? You are the one that makes the decisions on what's happening there. And so you have much more control in the alternative space. And you don't have to, right? You could buy into, for example, real estate syndication, which means it acts a little more like a mutual fund. You're less hands-on. You don't have as much of a say. Like, you could choose to do those things even in the alternative space. But our point here is to say that you don't have that same opportunity to do that in the more traditional investment space, but you can have much more control in the alternative space.
And there's just something to be said about having the ability to impact the return itself, right? Or do things that I can actually go and create a better time frame for my turnaround of investment. So control is a huge deal. The other thing that we love about alternative investments is cash flow. Now, when we think about the difference between typical investments, mutual funds, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, like, there can be an element of cash flow that exists within those, but that's not typically what they're good at doing, right? In the real estate world, as a good example, or let's say I'm utilizing a note, I can not only purchase the asset and have the asset be appreciating, but I can all the while have it be producing a cash flow to me. Now, what that does is it creates another level of safety, because even if the underlying asset, well, I should say, regardless of whether the underlying asset is going up or down, I still have that cash flow coming to me, making a difference. Okay, Rod, so let's switch gears for a second and let's talk a little bit about some of the primary risks that are associated with the alternative investment space, because we want to have full disclosure, especially if this is the first time you're hearing about alternatives. We want to make sure that you understand both the pros, those opportunities that exist, but also that you're considering the risks and potential challenges that come with it.
Yeah, well, one of the first ones that come to mind is liquidity. All that means is that you have cash on hand to take care of things as they may come up. So for example, if you're buying a piece of real estate and you have something that comes up and you need money now, but you didn't plan ahead, you didn't also have cash sitting in the bank to help take care of unexpected expenses or other things like that, then you could get into trouble, right? So when you consider buying into an asset like that you couldn't just easily turn around and sell, these are all bad outcomes. Whereas if you had planned ahead and you have liquidity on hand, then clears everything out.
So another thing to be thinking about is the potential complexity. And really, it's not as much the complexity as it is the familiarity, right? Because we're familiar with how stocks, bonds, and mutual funds work. We hear about them all the time. We're naturally less familiar with things like a real estate syndication, which is relatively simple from an investor perspective, but you have to be aware of the potential complexities that do exist so you can make the right decisions. So the best thing that you can do is focus on finding and working with people who have a great track record of success. We always tell people to find their tribe, right? Find people who are like you, who are investing in the same types of things that you are, and that have experience in doing it. Team up with those people, look for opportunities to work together. And by doing that, it'll make your investing so much more powerful than if you were to go it solo, go it alone.
Yeah. And then as you do that, you're going to build up a great advisor team. And what that means is you have CPAs that aren't just filing your tax returns, but they actually know how to work with you and advise you to take advantage of all the tax savings that are available within this space. You have attorneys that are helping you put together entities or do estate tax planning or whatever that may be. You're the core, but now you have professionals around you that know what they're doing as it relates to this space, and they're assisting you along the way.
Okay, so the question is, how do you start making money today and access alternative investments? Go to investwithbenefits.com. Again, it's investwithbenefits.com, and you can reach out directly to the Money Insights team.